finish it?
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You want me to say
Yeah. Yeah. So, we just change the remarks to I will check it this way.
And Masama to talk.
Oh, three more minutes. They need. Oh, okay. Oh. All right. Finally. So.
Am I going to introduce him or are you going to introduce him?
So the Masafari, I will introduce the moderator first, and the moderator will introduce you to the opening. So, okay, please sit here. Okay. So finally now we're gonna start our session. As you know, we all had to kick off the ball of the UGIH city collaboration. Goyang played the ball very actively during last 1 year. Today we have a session of Goyang demonstration. I love to give you all very important person as a moderator, Katherine Atkin. She is the co-chair of the UGIH GH Accounting Initiative Working Group. I give you the Katherine Atkin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park, and for all of your work on this amazing project. I'm very excited. It is the end of the day, but we're saving the best for last. First, before we start the program, I'd love to allow Masama Chioye, who is the director of this Global Innovation Hub, to give opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Katherine. And a good afternoon to all our participants. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to those that are following virtually. So I'm very pleased to provide some introductory remark to this session because this session is dealing with something that is extremely important for me. And also the product is one of the key delivery of the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. As I have mentioned in the morning, cities are key player if we want to address climate and sustainability because they are close to people. And the approach that the Global Innovation Hub is promoting is really based on how do we contribute in satisfying the needs of citizens, leveraging innovation, but doing it in a way that is aligned with the climate and sustainability goal. So if we want to address this, we need to work on all the levels. And one important lever is policy. And if we want to implement the right policy, we need also to have the right standard. The problem is currently, when it comes to GHG accounting, the only system that is available worldwide is what we call a production-based system for GHG accounting, where you look at the boundary of the city and you look at all the emission sources that are within the boundary of the city, and you consider that these are the carbon footprint of the city. Of course, this is not the right approach because you may have a city where you do not have actually source of emission within the boundary, but they are consuming all the product coming from this source of emission. So hence the importance of coming with a consumption-based approach for GHG accounting. So this session focus on this consumption-based approach for GHG accounting, and we would like to congratulate the city of Goyang for being one of the very first city to develop and try to implement this consumption-based approach for GHG accounting. So I will hand over now to Katherine, who was part of the group within the Global Innovation Hub with the other Katherine, with Kay, working on this consumption-based approach.
Thank you. Thank you, Masamba. And I just want to say it's been such an honor to be part of the hub in its first year and to be part of one of your flagship initiatives and to see all that Goyang City and the hub has accomplished in a short period of time. So what I'd like to do now, we're going to have some keynote speakers and then we're going to have a panel. First, I'm really pleased to introduce the mayor of Goyang's special city, Dr. Lee Dong-hwan, to talk about the work in Goyang City.
안녕하십니까. 고양 특례시장 이동환입니다. 오늘 이 의미 있는 세션을 열어주신 우리 UNFCCC 오바이스 샤마더 부총장님께 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 그리고 오늘 중요한 진행과 그리고 자장의 역할을 맡아주신 캐서린 아트킨 박사님께도 감사드립니다. 예.
Good evening. My name is Lee Dong-hwan. I am the mayor of Goyang Special City. I would first like to thank Deputy Executive Ovas Samad for providing this platform today and Dr. Katherine Atkin for moderating our session. I am incredibly grateful that they have given Goyang an opportunity to present our findings today.
UGIH 활동 안에서 오늘 이 세션은 굉장히 중요합니다. 탄소 중립에 있어서 도시의 역할이 강조되는 지금 도시가 어떤 역할을 해야 하는지 라는 문제에 대한 해답을 찾아가는 기본을 제시하기 때문입니다.
The role of the city is becoming increasingly important with respect to the goal of carbon neutrality. This session aims to provide a pathway to answering the question, what is the city's role in achieving carbon neutrality?
본 방법론은 라이프 사이클을 적용하여 제조 과정뿐만 아니라 소비 과정에서 배출되는 탄소를 계측하고 우리 일상생활에서 배출되는 탄소까지 포함하는 이론으로서 보다 탄탄한 인벤토리를 구축하는 것이 목적입니다. 그리고 탄탄한 인벤토리를 기반으로 단계별 활동을 제시하고 있습니다.
The first step in solving a problem is to know exactly what the problem is. Our goal was to accurately measure our city's greenhouse gas inventory. To do this, we wanted to not only measure the carbon emitted during the manufacturing process, but to look at the entire life cycle of a product and include the carbon produced during consumption. Based upon a more accurate picture of Goyang's greenhouse gas inventory, we were able to suggest step-by-step activities.
세계는 탄소 중립, 기후 위기 대응이라는 대전제 아래 같은 목표를 향해 노력해 오고 있습니다. 그 과정에서 많은 환경 전문가, 도시 전문가들이 전략과 방향에 대한 많은 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 각각의 전문 분야가 다르고 범위나 영역 차이가 있기 때문에 어찌 보면 서로 다른 이야기를 하는 것처럼 보이기도 합니다. 그러나 하나의 목표를 위한 다양한 전략은 존재하는 것입니다.
The world has been actively trying to achieve the singular goal of carbon neutrality on the assumption that this is the solution to the climate crisis. Various strategies and methods have been proposed by a variety of experts, including urban and environmental experts. Given the different perspectives and goals, it sometimes seems as if they are talking about completely different things. Nevertheless, it is important to consider all the views. We must not forget that there are a variety of solutions to the same problem.
다만 UGIH라는 틀 안에서 그 전략들이 상호 연계되어 수행될 때 지속 가능할 수 있는 것입니다. 전략들은 단계별로 잘 맞물려 수행되어야 큰 효과를 얻을 수 있는 것입니다.
A synergistic effect can only be achieved if the different strategies are integrated properly. For this reason, the role of UGIH is critical. The strategies and their integration can only be successful in the long term with the right oversight.
지난 1년간 고양시가 방법론의 실행을 해보았습니다. 현실적으로 데이터 취합에서 한계가 있었습니다만 의미 있는 결과를 얻을 수 있었습니다.
Last year, Goyang introduced the consumption-based emission calculation method to our city. Although there are certain limitations in data collection, we were able to still obtain a meaningful result.
탄소 배출량 산정에서 빠뜨렸던 부분을 찾아낼 수 있었습니다. 사람의 행동과 생활 속에서 배출되는 탄소량도 실제로 매우 크다는 것을 알 수 있었습니다. 또한 이 과정 중 시민들과 대화를 통해 우리 시민들이 생활 속에서 구체적으로 실천할 수 있는 아이디어를 제공해야겠다는 아이디어를 얻기도 했습니다. 여러모로 좋은 기회였습니다.
We found that consumption-based carbon emission should not be ignored. Using this data and talking with citizens, we were able to formulate actions citizens could take to reduce their consumption-related carbon footprint.
오늘 이 의미 있는 자리를 통해 UGIH의 본연의 의미와 또 모든 기후 행동의 기본이 되는 방법론의 가치가 다시 한번 조명되기를 바라며 더욱이 세계 도시들과 공유되고 확산되기를 바랍니다.
I hope that this momentous occasion today will highlight the importance of the role of the UGIH and the value of this methodology that underlies climate action, and that it will be shared and disseminated with cities around the world.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we have a wonderful colleague that I've got to spend a lot of time with in this last year. It's been wonderful. Dr. Kwigon Kim, who is a professor emeritus at Seoul National University and also the co-leader of the UNFCCC Goyang Cooperation Task Force team. Dr. Kim?
Thank you, Dr. Atkin, for introducing me, and Dr. Masamba Theoye, and also respectable Mayor of Goyang Special City, and ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely honored to be here to talk about to more further elaborate what Honorable Mr. Mayor mentioned just before. You may remember last year at COP26, we talked about conceptual framework and methodology in general. After 1 year, I will, on behalf of this organization, talk about the result of first phase of the demonstration test. The third and fourth, the second and the third demonstration test will be followed with the same methodology with some modifications for the selected test areas. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts. First, I will touch on the methodology which we developed for the development test, and then move on to case study, and then I will summarize what we have found. Having said that, due to time constraints, let me move on to quickly. First slide, please. This is the integrated model which we used for the demonstration test. I think we tried to reflect what Katherine first you talked about the up-level approach and the multi-level approach. I hope you like it. Okay, next one, please. By definition, the GHG accounting refers to process to measure amount of carbon emissions which a organization emit. An example of GHG accounting is shown here. On the left-hand side, you can see the emissions from building. And we later on, for the demonstration test, we added emissions from human need. And on the right-hand side, you can see emission deductions, which can be obtained from the nature, such as plants, soils, water. This is our model to calculate emissions for both the building energy and the human need. Next one, please. This is the, as already mentioned by Dr. Theory, we can think of different types of emissions. Production-based emissions, consumption-based emissions, core-based human need-based emissions, and end-use-based emissions, and life cycle assessment-based emissions, and extraction-based emissions. I think my next speaker will talk about extraction-based emissions and consumption-based emissions, etc. But I hope still based on the methodology which we used to first phase. Am I right? And this one is the same information is depicted in graph form. So in the production-based accounting, we normally talked about the fuels, use of fuel and electricity, so-called scope 1 and scope 2. But we, in our model, we added another dimension of emissions, which is called the emission from human need in terms of their goods services. Actually, Masamba says the 5 their basic human needs, but here, as examples, we include food and clothes. It will be elaborated further by taking Goyang case example. Next one. This one is the methodology which we used for demonstration test. In terms of the building energy, the upper part shows the building energy, which includes scope 1 and scope 2. And at the bottom, you can see emissions from human need. Each the parameters need different types of data input, and what kind of data should be used are shown in this diagram. And then if we add this one with this one, then you can get a total amount of emissions for buildings. That's what we have been trying to do. Next one, please. We selected the West District Office, which belongs to the Goyang City. And this one shows the some information on the building which we selected for demonstration test. And also these 2 pictures shows how it looks like. This is beautiful and greenery. I will talk about more about what kind of the component it contains. Next one, please. I already showed hypothetical example of the emissions from buildings and human need. This is actually it contains actual data which we obtained from the selected building. So different color, energy means the emission, indicate emissions from the building energy, which include the scope 1 and scope 2. On top of the energy, you are now looking at the energy the emissions from human need. And at the very top of the bar, you can see construction. Later on, you will see the construction, the material, which were used for building construction. We calculated the amount of the consumed materials and the amount of emissions. Also, we calculated the carbon sequestration in terms of the carbon sink and the storage. You will see the actual figures later on. Next one, please. Here, it is actually a very time-consuming job to calculate. Nevertheless, we have the figures here for building construction materials. On the left-hand side, you can see type of work. And in the middle, you can see carbon emissions and unit on the far right-hand side. Next one, please. And also, we calculated emissions from all food services and the items using this the formula. But I think should be improved if necessary. Next one, please. Then we also calculated emissions by end use of the building, in terms of computer, ventilator, refrigeration, water, heating, lighting. And as you can see, the largest item is that the space heating, and followed by, I think, followed by the lighting. Next one, please. This one also, we believe the consumption-based accounting methodology can be used not only for baseline the emission inventory, but also can be used for the emission reduction target, and also climate policy, that which are different from production-based emission accounting. We found later on, in conclusion, I will elaborate further. This one, business as usual, and here also a deduction curve. So in Goyang City, with the effort which will be made, Mr. Mayor, in the he has, I have some figures, but I will skip off because of the time limit. And here, Goyang City is trying to achieve emission reduction target of 50% in the office building by 2030, and then 80% by 2050, based on 2021 levels, meaning base year which we used is 2021. Through various emission measures, some of them already made, mentioned by Honorable Mr. Mayor in his speech, which was delivered this morning. You may remember that. One of the important co-benefit measures for mitigation and adaptation Goyang City has adopted for the building is to create the A, green smart building, which include Internet of Things, IoT, water supply system. Street heating, which elaborated by the Deputy Assistant Minister, Mr. Verbeeck, and blue-green infrastructure, among others. Next one, please. The blue-green infrastructure, this one, this is blue-green infrastructure is an important component of large project called the Goyang Carbon Neutral Eco-City, which is the honorable, the Dr. Lee's initiative. We have adopted the climate, I should say Goyang City, or the building, has adopted the climate positive MBS approach, which stands for nature-based approach. The building now has a sustainable blue-green system, which is connected with the surrounding eco network of the urban drainage system, which consists of the 16 LID, low carbon impact project, and also green areas and wetland areas, already which was mentioned by Honorable Mayor. And also 71 river systems, which Goyang City contains. So you can see all integrated, connected system. The forms the green infrastructure, green blue infrastructure. Next one. No, I'm sorry, it is a bit. This is the tool which I'm going to suggest. Before that, originally I tried to elaborate a little bit about the LNG-based project. It has been, for your information, it has been suggested the LNG-based GHG accounting from extraction-based emission to consumption-based emissions at household will be next phase of our demonstration test. So I have the really great expectation from this project, which will demonstrate, in particular, territorial-based emissions, which is very important for the internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, which is one of a very important part of the Paris Agreement. Next one, please. And here I have some climate actions for the LDCs may include. LDCs meaning locally determined contributions, which we expect complement nationally determined contributions. Throughout this day, many peoples emphasize the importance of and the value of sustainable development goals at the city level. So here we have a list of climate action for the LDCs. I will not go to the details item by item. Next one, please. Also, the suggestions include the understanding the policy instrument available to implement consumption and need side based etc. Next one. Here, according to findings of first phase demonstration test, we developed this integrated model which can be tested and applied to residential community areas to empower people or residents. And it has been suggested this model can be used for the third phase of our demonstration test with the close consultation with the UNFCCC and our relevant partners. Next one, please. Then you may think about what would be next steps. After the first phase steps, we would like to continue our effort for the industry scale, meaning LNG, and the neighborhood district or city scale residential community. And this year, we didn't do any work for digital data platform and blockchain-based verifiable credentials for carbon market, which include the ITMO internationally and the ETS regionally and locally. This one shows the urban computing methodology, which can be ended up with the blockchain and DLT based result. Next one. Please let me summarize my presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have found is that two things. First one, the result of this project shows that consumption need-based emissions are significant and significantly much larger than emissions establishing using what I call conventional production-based emissions, much larger because we added the emissions from human need. And also we found knowledge-based information and data derived from project are useful to change citizens' behavior, also consumption patterns. I hope this particular dialogue will begin to set what I call first generation of a bold CBA system to dedicate to combat climate change. My wishful proposition would be that a new initiative, so-called a new GHG accounting mechanism toward carbon neutrality, will be announced in due course at contracting part, the conference of contracting parties. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity, the many things to those who participated and contributed this particular first phase demonstration test. And then I also observed the leading role played by Honorable Mr. Mayor and Masamba. So our special thanks must go to both of them. Thank you very much for your kind attention and patience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for that. It's amazing work that you all have done. Thank you so much for your hard work. Another round of applause for Dr. Kim. Okay, and for Dr. Park, too, and the rest of the staff. So we're going to round out our keynotes now with, you have the longest title. Nathaniel Amann-Blake is his name. He is Assistant Deputy Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation for the Government of British Columbia, Canada. Thank you so much for giving us some remarks about your exciting work.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, and I know I don't want to stand between you and possible reception drinks or anything else, I'll say a few words and then I actually have a demonstration video that I'd like to play. But first, I attended virtually last year and was able to outline a pilot project, and I'm here to actually demonstrate we've made a lot of progress in the last year. But the other part is to thank Masamba and the team here, because the connection with Dr. Kim and the presentation you just saw, the need to understand the data behind the greenhouse gas accounting, have it be able to be used in multiple different ways, sliced and diced, I think is the technical term, to be able to show how you'd get from production all the way through a life cycle analysis into your end use result. So that's really what I believe our work in the province of BC with digital identity, distributed ledger technology, and then we do have leading climate policies that require mandatory reporting under the law of how much GHGs you're doing. So we can have confidence in BC anyway that the source data is sound. So maybe with that, I'll actually see if, well, it looks like our presentation may be coming up. Okay, if you actually want to just scroll to the slide with the video, it's about 3 or 4 in. Yeah, and let's just see if we can play the video. And if not, I'll tell you what the story is. Oh, yeah. So while this is loading, I'll tell you, most recently, Dr. Kim and I and a team at the University of British Columbia have actually scoped out what the life cycle accounting study will be. That work's kicking off really any day, probably the time we get home and have a rest. And then the team at UBC will take up the challenge in British Columbia to then link up with the work at Seoul. And maybe I'll keep telling you about it. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about digital credentials. Using distributed ledger technology, what the intent is to make the exchange of data. Oh, yeah. And then sound will be the next one. Let's do it.
Hello, I'm Bruce Ralston, Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation for the Government of British Columbia, Canada's westernmost province. I speak to you today from the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. British Columbia is a leader in climate innovation, and we are constantly pushing forward with cutting-edge solutions to reduce emissions and promote clean economic growth.
As action to stop climate change has become a global priority, there is increased pressure on the natural resource sector to transition to sustainable practices. With this comes a growing demand for companies to be transparent proving how their actions and policies align with climate goals. To address this need, Energy and Mines Digital Trust was initiated to support British Columbia's transition to a clean, resilient economy. This project is coordinating a digital ecosystem of organizations, including environmental auditors, government bodies, natural resource companies, and non-government organizations. Energy and Mines Digital Trust is implementing natural resource use cases, allowing participants to test sharing and receiving sustainability data. In collaboration with indigenous organizations, the open source community, and public and private organizations, Energy and Mines Digital Trust showcases how digital trust technology has the potential to improve access to transparent data through digital credentials. A digital credential is the digital equivalent to a physical credential, such as a business's permit to operate or a mine's proof of company registration. Digital credentials make exchanging information simple and secure, building trust and efficiency into reporting processes.
At the Open Earth Foundation, we have identified digital trust technology as a fundamental pillar to address the climate crisis. As such, we have designed the Open Climate Portal as an integrated climate accounting system designed to help corporates, private sector as a whole, and subnational governments roll up their information to national and global levels through nested accounting. Transparency and digital trust is a fundamental pillar of the Paris Agreement. Through this technology, working in the Energy Mines Digital Trust project at the Open Earth Foundation, we're excited to advance these new tools to help collectively target our goals and establish the level of accountability we need for global scale impact.
At PwC, it has become clear that stakeholders are more invested than ever in a company's sustainability practices. Our team is responsible for supporting organizations as they report this information to ensure it is accurate, open, and timely. Our audits are based on globally recognized standards. Our work not only supports the accuracy of the reporting, but we also provide feedback to companies to help them future-proof their reporting processes in order to best support their sustainability goals. Digital credentials help to keep this data secure and protects information from manipulation. This maintains the high level of credibility and trust associated with our assurance reports, regardless of where or to whom this data is shared.
At Tech, we are committed to responsible mining and sustainable practices in areas like health and safety, climate change, water and nature, and in collaboration with communities and indigenous peoples. We participate in a number of sustainable mining programs where our commitments and performance are externally verified. Digital trust technology has the potential to facilitate the sharing of our sustainability data and performance. As one example, Tech currently reports on annual greenhouse gas emissions to the province of British Columbia, demonstrating our progress in decarbonization and supporting the transition to a low-carbon economy. While our verified data is already being shared with the province, a digital trust ecosystem could help share similar information with different and multiple recipients. In these cases, verified data and reports could be generated and customized depending on the request or requirements.
As more countries around the world commit to net zero climate policies, it is essential that natural resource companies can prove their products are responsibly sourced. This pilot project is establishing forward-looking tools and policies that can be utilized across sectors and industries to simplify reporting practices, build relationships, and increase trust. To learn more about improving access to transparent data for clients, stakeholders, and consumers, contact Energy and Mines Digital Trust.
Congratulations. Very exciting work. I'm also looking forward to making the connections a little bit later in our panel. But before we do that, we have a special, we wanted to present a report from the first year of the Goyang City's work, and Dr. Kim presented to you some of those insights, but there was a lot more that happened this year. And so what I'd like to have right now is Mayor Lee to stand up and present Masamba, facing the audience, a copy of this first of many reports to the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub from Goyang City's mayor. Fantastic, great work. Okay, we have a really sparkly panel for you right now. So stay focused, and if our panelists can come and sit up in the front, that'd be great. Yeah, we've got an all in-person panel, which is pretty special. Okay. We've got, are there 5 of us? All right, here we go. I still need my glasses. Okay. I am going to quickly introduce our panelists. And is Jorn here too? Yeah, he's right there. He's coming up. Okay, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we're going to jump into some questions, some sense making from the presentations. And I want to say it's a wonderful group here. And let me just start with Ben Jantz, the head of research and innovation for the Global Covenant of Mayors. So glad you're here. He's also the chair of our cities track for the Innovation Hub. So thank you very much for that work. Katherine Foster, executive director of the Green Digital Finance Alliance, and also a stalwart supporter of the hub and this initiative with Goyang City. And then we've got Jorn Verbeeck, senior sustainability expert at KPMG, and another supporter of this project. And then we have Andy Kerr, the Chief Strategy Officer at Climate Kick. So these are also core institutional partners for the hub. So we're very grateful for you being here today. So we're going to start with Ben. And I'd like you to reflect on the keynotes. And from your perspective at the Global Covenant of Mayors, to kind of make the connections. What's happening here? What did we learn that can be of use in this larger global cities initiative?
Thanks so much, Katherine. Ooh. Hi, everyone. Thrilled to be here, and thanks so much for having us on this panel. I think we can't understate the risk that both Goyang and British Columbia have taken in undertaking both the trust, but also consumption-based accounting. And I underscore that because to do an approach that's focused on core human needs means to do something that very few other cities, states, regions are trying to undertake at this point in time. It's just not the way that things are done. So by doing that, you're taking in a lot of risk, but as you can see, come out the other side with a product, with a process that works, that has consultation at the core of it, and you come out for the good, right? And you have stakeholders who are bought in at every step of the process. You're asking yourself at every stage, is what I'm doing meeting what my community needs? Is that food? Is that shelter, right? Is that energy? Is that transport? And if the answer to those is, well, it's never just yes or no. There's always a lot of gray area, right? But if the answer to that is at least halfway there, then you're already making a ton of progress. So for me, internalizing this risk and committing to the reward that comes at the end of it and making sure that you're partnering with the right folks, public, private, academic, civil society, otherwise, to make those solutions happen, is a proof of concept that I think we in the Global Innovation Hub need to take note of. And I'm not going to spoil Katherine Foster's part of this presentation, but in an approach that we're developing, there's an element where we'd love to continue to share those examples and distribute them and make it better known and build the capacity for others to replicate and make it their own as well.
Thank you so much, Ben. And you're at just the right perch and perspective for us to figure out how to scale these innovations. Okay, Katherine, there was a little preview of this cookbook. You've heard it mentioned a couple times. So Katherine's going to tell us about this urban implementation cookbook. What are we thinking about this concept? How does it sort of fit with where we are in the Global Innovation Hub right now?
Jorn saying that I might steal a bit of his thunder, but not the case at all. We've been a very collaborative group from the outset, and a lot of the conceptualization around this came from the very start when I was actually working with Martin at Open Earth Foundation, and we were trying to determine how to do the GHG accounting, what tools, what data were available, and it was very clear that actually it was not a very it was not very easy to navigate around that. We make a lot of assumptions when we come into it from a policy perspective or a data perspective or an accounting perspective about what is available. And so we started talking about the notion of how there's a recipe. Everyone talks about a recipe. It's a predetermined, prescriptive approach to how to do innovation. And we wanted to flip that on its head and say, actually, what we need to do is something very adaptable, a demonstrator approach that says, actually, let's take stock of what tools we have, what ingredients we have in terms of data, and then actually create a recipe around that for what works for the city based on actual needs. And that's actually how this got conceptualized. And so we came up with a very circular demonstrator process, and this is the first pilot. I've also incorporated that in my own work. Almost 3 months ago, I took on the executive directorship of the Green Digital Finance Alliance, which was established by Ant Group and the UNEP. And we have a series on cities. And what we found also in those pilots and the initiatives we're doing in 9 cities across the European Union under the Horizons program is that, yes, we're trying to, for example, do digital green mortgages. Where do you get the data for that? How do you create the financing behind retrofitting those buildings, behind the new food supplies and innovations that are going to happen, behind all of these initiatives that you saw in that massive layered conceptual framework that Dr. Kim presented. And this is where we start actually doing even more demonstrators that then link up the finance part to actually pay for all of this, as well as the GHG accounting. So to me, it is all part of a systemic approach and systemic purpose behind this working group. And I'm just really grateful to see it come to this point and very thankful for the collaboration.
Thank you so much, Katherine, with the K. So Katherine with the C is now going to talk to Jorn and to give you a chance to steal back your thunder. But I'm first going to ask you a question. You're in this awesome position of having done a lot of city work and also now being on the private side with KPMG. So your job is to look at what was said from BC's perspective and Goyang City. How does this all come together? What are the implications for where we need to go next?
Thank you, Katherine. I think there's 2 elements in there in both presentations. I think one, we've been talking a lot today about stick and carrot, but if you look at the approach, it's not just the meta language, it's also really tangible. And I think there, whether you're on the public side or the private side, just by making it tangible, like what are we talking about in terms of consumption? I mean, that's how you start building policy, but also how you start at the private side developing things, whether it's products or services. The second thing, it was really small, but the graphic that was shown on how does it work when it comes to using data and technology, like the whole flow, there it becomes really interesting because there you can replicate. These are things you can take out, bring to other cities and say, what are you doing on all these processes? It's often still manual work. And it's all manual work that's not going to implementation. Just checking on how technology can leverage, and not saying technology will solve it all, I didn't say that, but how technology can leverage policy making, implementation, and also, I'm not going to say choice editing, but what we put on the market, I think that's really key. So therefore, big effort. And I've seen the same in the presentation from British Columbia to see how that just network approach is helping to connect all actors and work at the same challenge.
Thank you very much. And to round out our round 1, Andy Kerr, who's the Chief Strategy Officer for Climate Kick, can you reflect on sort of what you've heard and given Climate Kick's work, what are you thinking about in maybe in a different way than you were before you heard these presentations?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the speakers, Mr. Dr. Kim. So, as Climate Kick, we are leading the technical support for the EU Cities mission, for example, in terms of helping cities get to net zero production emissions, net zero by 2030, which is hugely radical transformation is required. And I think what I was reflecting listening to those excellent talks was, on the absolutely the need for the demand-led, the need to bring in multiple players and multiple sources of data. I would particularly like to build on Catherine Foster's point that for us, learning is the flip side of innovation. And what we have struggled with in the past with many cities that we have worked on is where we have seen people go in and try and solve an individual project or an individual policy or an individual economic, which does not deliver the systemic change that we need. And so actually, thank you. So for me, the reflection of how do we bring those things together and how do we build those trust networks? Fantastic, really interesting what's happening in British Columbia. How do we build the thinking around the needs-based piece? One of the things that we have found with many of our cities is that when we try and address the climate challenge, that actually you have to solve 2 or 3 other challenges in order to solve the climate challenge. In other words, you have to look at the place and how you support a thriving, vibrant, healthy, clean place as being at the heart of the action. And then actually some of the climate issues solve themselves. So often what we're seeing is when you're financing cities, you need to be financing for clean, healthy cities. And that solves a lot of the emission issues that you have been talking about. If you only focus on the carbon emissions themselves, you don't actually get the capital in to solve the wider problem. So I think the need for the data, the need for that trust system of the sort that you've been describing, absolutely. And we would love to basically, as partners in the Innovation Hub, we would love to take the learning that is coming out of these experiments, these tests, these explorations being done in different places and share them with the cities, the regions, the places that we are working with. And similarly, try and take some of the learning from those places and share them back, because that is the only way in which we're going to scale up, replicate some of these solutions at the speed and the scale that we require. So it's exciting times, I think, for us.
Thank you so much, Andy. And we've finished round 1, and there's I can't resist a lightning round with this esteemed group. I also really love seeing come together and realize that we've made progress, but there's a lot of opportunity for greater collaboration. So I'm going to give you a question, each of you, and then you can decide to answer it or pick your own question to answer. So I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about the cookbook if you wanted to. Anything more you want to share about where that's going?
I'll play by the rules, Katherine. I'll answer the question. So let me start by saying, so at the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, we're an alliance of more than 12,500 cities who are committed to taking action on climate change, right? We have 2 core foundational research and innovation agendas that are helping drive this action. Cities who themselves have come up to us and said, you need to help us resolve this if you want us to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, or at least help our countries achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, right? Now, how do we actually do it? We've built this as the implementation COP, right? We've seen the hashtags outside the blue zone. Now, the cookbook, or as we call it, the Urban Implementation Cookbook, is one of these practical approaches, just a guide to help cities, especially those in what we term this longer tail of smaller, intermediary, low-capacity cities who have all the ambition as just the same as the bigger cities out there, but just are not as well-staffed, well-resourced enough to take on that same level. This helps them get there. Now, it's not going to solve everything, but it's an approach that we'd like to think we can build on, that we can help disseminate with other city networks, with other partners, and have others build that capacity. This is, again, a stakeholder exercise, a process-based exercise in truth, and we'd love to continue to build that with other partners along the way.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. All right, Katherine, from your perspective, you talked a little about GDFA. What do you think you can see going forward might be an opportunity for collaboration directly out of this? You've already done so much, but there's more.
There's always more. But I love this, and I think this is what we've been talking about is, SDG 17 is about partnerships and collaboration, right? But it's become a trope. It's meaningless unless you actually create a process and sort of make it less theoretical and actually very practical and very applicable. And that's what we've tried to do here. And from my perspective, what I can see is adding a few more equipment, a few more ingredients, and a few more recipes to create a larger menu, keeping that analogy. And some of the things that we're working on, for example, is how, for example, for green mortgages or some of these other European initiatives, we're actually going to be collaborating with an initiative in Canada as well, taking that same approach there. So we're increasing the reach of the methodology. On top of it, we're looking at different types of data input. I've just recently been named a commissioner for the Natural Capitals Coalition Value Commission, and we're looking at Indigenous knowledge and data. How can we encapsulate that in new forms of data and inputs? And then coming back to the EU, looking at policy can be a driver, but it can also be a barrier, and you have to shift and innovate around that. So, the privacy policies in the EU meant that some of the data we thought we would get on energy efficiency and building and consumption patterns weren't available. So we had to create collaborations and partnerships around that in order to leverage and harness individual data and aggregate that while respecting privacy. And that required a whole new set of innovation around that. And then, of course, there's the financing models around it, but that's for another time.
Thank you, Katherine. And okay, Jorn, you're incisive and you ask yourself and others the tough questions. We have many solutions we see in cities, and you've seen this in your work, and they're good, and we have trouble scaling them. And so what about what we're doing is different, or what is it that we have to do better to make sure that doesn't happen?
I think that's two questions. The one is embracing complexity and accepting imperfection. It's just really trying, go out there. And I think that's why we also set the cookbook. Half of the times you arrive at home and you think, I'm going to cook this, and you don't have half of the ingredients. But you still need to put something on the table. And I think by doing that, it's also inventing new ways. But at the same time, next time, also sharing that menu with other people. And I think that the idea of replicating, that will be key in the years to come. Because now we want to do it from beginning until the end. It takes often 5, 10, 15 years. We don't have that time anymore. And I think therefore the city's mission, but also other initiatives are really key to say, we started this process and we invite you to take the lessons learned already when you are designing your process, and just to start learning already halfway, and not just with the good practices. And I think the last element, as said, we should also map what we don't know yet, because we often say, well, take for example, just transition. We don't know how we're going to do that, but we keep putting that in dialogues like, let's talk about it and let's see. But that's not enough. We should say, how are we going to do the things we don't master yet, and put them equally on the table.
Thank you, Jorn. Thank you. And Andy, you get to close us out here. Anything, just feeding off of what Jorn just said, you do all this work, and what do you think we need to be doing strategically?
I think my reflection of today is that quite a lot of the speakers in this hub have been talking about not what happens today, it's what happens next Monday when everyone's back at work. What do they actually do? If you're a city leader, you know, what do you actually do right now, Monday morning, 9 o'clock, to do something? So I think a lot of it is about actually giving people that almost the assurance, the comfort to just go out and try, because none of us have all of the answers to solve all of these problems in any of the places we're working in. And we need the approaches that have been pulled through, the cookbooks and so on, because we all need to be going out and learning by doing, because there isn't a neat roadmap that says, if you do this here, it's all going to work perfectly. You know, so that whole thing of, can we build that assurance? And I think under Masamba's leadership here, we've got a global innovation hub that is seeking to be that. How do we pull together the insights? How do we share it rapidly? How do we learn fast? And I think that whole notion of experiment, learn, share, that's at the heart.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful way to wrap us up. I actually want to give a round of applause to this group here. And really, thank you so much for the insights and for all the work you just committed to doing going forward. Dr. Park is going to say a few words. Is that? Okay, fight for the, there you go.
Okay, so maybe just to thank you all for staying too late with us. and for the participant, and thanks the panel and our distinguished presenter for the excellent work that has been done. As I have mentioned at the beginning, cities are really important, and whatever we can do to empower cities so that they can satisfy the need of their citizens and do it in a way that is aligned with the climate and sustainability goal, we will support strongly. And we are looking forward to be useful and to be able to support cities in this journey. Thank you.
Dear participants, please don't go. We will have just a short video demonstration. So one of our colleagues will be presenting a short video, but we would like to have a picture of the panel, please, before going. And then after the video, we will make a few announcements.